and welcome to another lawnfawn video. Today we are introducing our brand new stamp set, Forest Feast, and its coordinating dies. So let's go ahead and check it out. So first up we have this cute little squirrel, we have a raccoon, and we have a little hedgehog. We have a slice of pumpkin pie, of course, a little basket of bread, a plate with food, a little bowl of mashed potatoes, a gravy boat, an apple, and a little glass too. We have a fun mushroom, and then a little pilgrim's hat, and an acorn. We have some great sentiments. So we have happy fall and then happy Thanksgiving, and we have so thankful and then for each moment with you, and then some parentheses sentiments with now let's eat, hope it's tasty, and pass the gravy. And then my favorite stamp is this tree stump. I'm stamping it out in some walnut ink, and I'm using my MISTI tool because I don't have the steadiest hands for a large solid stamp like this, and the MISTI gives me a nice steady hand and a really beautiful impression. You can see just how gorgeous that is. I'm using my Copic markers to add some color to these fun images, and I love using E31 and E34 for squirrels there, and so I'm just adding a little shading kind of to the left side of the squirrel and underneath his arms and around his legs. And then next up I'm going to be coloring my cute little raccoon, and I like alternating between all the different grays, neutral, tonal grays, warm grays for the raccoon, just depending on what my card is going to be. So today I decided to go along with those neutral grays, and so I'm blending, adding some shading around his chin and under his arms and kind of towards the outsides of him so that he kind of looks three-dimensional with that little lightness in the middle. Next, I'll be working on the darker areas of him. And once again, I'm keeping the darkness right to the edge because I don't want it to overlap his eyes. I want to make sure I can still see his eyes even through that darkness there. And I love the contrast between that N6 and kind of that N2. Now for my hedgehog, you can see that I'm taking my marker and defining the edges of those little spikes. That way I know exactly where I'm going to have this darker brown color on him. So it really kind of helps me keep my shading going and not going too far into his body. Then once I have all of that done, I can move on to his body, which I'm doing in a much lighter color so that there's a nice contrast between the two parts of him. So next up, I'm going to be coloring the food. And there I'm coloring it as a pumpkin pie. For that little bread basket, you can also color them like corn on the cob too, which I think is really cool. So depending on what kind of colors you want to introduce to your card. And that's one thing I love about all the food items is you can color the bowls to match whatever your color scheme that you're going to have on your card or your pattern paper that you're using. So in this case, I'm going to have some turquoises, and then I'm going to have a red for that bowl of mashed potatoes. So I like being able to kind of bring in those fall colors, but with that turquoise and the red and the orange. Oh, I just love how it looks. For the gravy boat there, I've just added a little warm gray texture and then blended it out with my colorless blender. And then for the apple, I'm putting the lightest part in that top right corner, so it's kind of like the shine on the apple. And then next up, I'm going to color this cute little toadstool. And the toadstool can be either one, just kind of something for setting the scene, but it can also be a little chair for these critters to sit on while they're having their Thanksgiving feast. I love this pilgrim hat because you can add it for this card to be more Thanksgiving based, or you can take it away and have it more just be food based because food is always good. So here we've got some coordinating dies. We're going to bend them apart at the tabs, or you can use your wire snips to separate them. Then I'm going to line them up with my stamped images, hold them in place with some low tack tape. I've used some post-it note tape here, and then I'm going to run them through my die cut machine. And then my favorite part is popping them out of the dies and then having all of these cute images to play around with. So here you can see how you can kind of mix and match where the critters are going to sit, what kind of food you have on the table. You can have them sit on the toadstool, so there's so much fun things that you can do with this. So I've cut some peacock cardstock with the stitch wood grain backdrop, and then I'm using my grassy border on some noble fir cardstock here. And then I'm just going to trim down that grass piece, and you can see that I'm starting to form my scene. So there I have some knock-on wood papers, some wood grain papers, and I'm die cutting some birch trees with those. And I'm going to put the birch trees on either side of my scene to really kind of frame the scene and kind of center everything up. It's kind of a fun way just to add a little bit of extra something to this card. And then I've got some foam tape on that grass, and then I'm stamping my favorite sentiment from the set, which is the so thankful for each moment with you. And I'm die cutting that with a banner die. Now I wanted to add some color to the tree stump, so I'm using E31 and E34, adding some shading just around the rings and on the outside of the tree stump, and also on the top and the bottom of all those lines on the tree stump. Then I'm just blending all of that out, and you can see how much extra detail it adds to that kind of brown stamped tree stump. Now I can just start layering my whole thing together. So I've got my little raccoon there, and then he's gonna have his little tree stump table in front of him. And then I'm just gonna be using some foam dots to add everything else, just to add some extra dimension. And so this is a pretty simple card, but I think it packs a big punch, and it would be a really great card to give to someone that was maybe hosting Thanksgiving dinner or just thinking about someone during the fall season. So now I'm just putting that on my card base and then attaching my sentiment with some more foam dots, and I just love it. I just think it's so cute. Those little guys eating at the tree stump just cracks me up every single time. So something that's really cool about this tree stump is that it's been perfectly sized to work with our slide on over die. And so this is the shortest slightly curved die. I'm going to line that right up in the middle of the tree stump, hold it in place there with some low tack tape, run it through my die cut machine, and I'm going to be able to create a pass the gravy slider. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start working on doubling up my foam. So I've got my foam tape here. I'm going to just double up that foam tape, and then I'm going to cut a very thin piece because we're going to have to work with a very thin piece on this tree stump since it's small. So I'm just going to trim that whole piece down, and then I'm going to be using a dime because it's also a little bit smaller, and I'm putting it right in place there and kind of just putting the tape all the way around the outside edges of that tree stump, making sure that it's not in the way of that dime so it can move freely. My gravy boat stamp is a little bit smaller than the dime, so I want to make sure the dime blends into this whole tree stump scene. So I'm tracing the dime onto some cardstock, coloring it in with a Copic marker to match the tree stump, and then I'm just going to trim right around that pencil line that I created. And then I noticed that it needed to be a little bit darker, so I'm just kind of use my E25 marker instead of my E23 marker and make that a little bit darker, add some liquid glue to my penny, and then add that brown piece right on top. And that's going to help the slider really blend into the tree stump. I am cutting a piece of doubled up foam for my gravy boat there. And so you can see that little piece there. I'm going to trim it down to be the perfect size. Then I can take my dime, put my dime behind the tree stump, and then add my little foam piece right on top. Now next up is my trick for sliders, and I'm going to use my powder tool here and go all around the outside edges of that piece of foam, making sure that there's no stickiness at all so that it runs really, really well in that slider track. Then I can go ahead and remove that liner tape and add my gravy boat, creating this really cute and fun slider. I die cut another tree stump there. I'm going to remove all of that liner tape on the foam, and then I'm going to line my main tree stump on top of the base here. Now once I have that whole base, you can see there on the left that I saved the slider piece there that came out of it. So I'm going to add some tape runner to that and just pop that in right below that dime. And now it's going to make it look completely seamless, like you can't even tell that that slider track is there. Next up, I'm going to be using some Bristol Smooth cardstock because I'm going to be blending my distress inks, and I feel like it works really well for that. So I cut the A2 largest size of the dotted rectangles there. I cut 2 of them, and then on one of them I'm going to die cut a little simple stitched hillside, and on the other side a simple grassy hillside. Now I'm going to create, instead of doing a blue sky like normal, I was inspired by Elena to create this kind of orangey sky for fall. So I'm starting with some spice marmalade, and I'm starting off of the piece of cardstock and then moving on in circular motions to create this really great blended look. As I build up my spice marmalade, then I'm going to switch over to my scattered straw and blend those two and keep it really light up towards the top so that you really get this great gradient. I decided I want a little extra orange, so I added there to the bottom. And then I'm doing the same thing for the grass with crushed olive and peeled paint. So my peeled paint's my darker color, and I'm going to add that to the top, creating a nice little gradient blend, doing it on both the simple stitch hillside there and on the grassy part too. Now next up, I wanted to use my So Thankful For You little word die, but I didn't have the right color brown cardstock, so I just used my Copic marker and made the color that I needed. So I scribbled it all over and then ran it through my die cut machine, and now that So Thankful For You is the perfect coordinating brown. I'm going to layer my little simple stitched hillside there over the grassy hillside, And then I'm going to start layering everything behind my slider mechanism. So I'm going to add the cute little raccoon there and the squirrel, and then also all of the food on the table too. That way that whole piece is ready to be added to the card. Then I can start layering these pieces on my card base. So you can see that it's shorter than the standard size card because I want there to be some white on the below part of my card base. So I've layered my orange sky and then my green grass. And now I'm going to stamp the Pass the Gravy sentiment, which is perfect for this whole gravy slider idea. I'm adding some liquid glue to the back of my little delicate word border sentiment there, and I'm going to layer that right on top. I think it looks so pretty. And then now I'm going to use some tape runner and add my slider mechanism there right to the middle, and then add my little critters there sitting on their toadstools, little chairs, with some foam tape right onto the card. Now right here was when I realized there was a little too much white space at the bottom of the card, so I trimmed off 1/8 of an inch, and now my card is all ready to go, and that gravy boat sliding back and forth cracks me up so much. It's so cute. It's so fun. I love that it's interactive but kind of really subtle too, which is really awesome. Now, I've been having so much fun making shadow box cards, so I just had to make a little fall themed one. So I've cut out my 2 pieces here, my one with my rectangle window and then my other base, and that's the beginning of my shadow box. So once I have those 2 pieces, I can go ahead and fold along the score lines that the die created for me. There's one somewhat in the middle of the piece and then a little tab on the end, and then I'll repeat that on the other piece. I'm going to do that one in the middle there and then that tab on the end. Once I have those both folded, I'm going to add some 1/8 inch score tape to each of those tabs, and then I'm going to take my 2 pieces and line them up. I'm going to remove that liner tape, line those 2 pieces up, and then I can press that little tab over, connecting the 2 pieces to make one long piece. Now here I had some extra kind of ink blended piece that didn't turn out how I wanted it, but it was perfect to keep it because I was able to cut my little insert hills that come with the shadow box die out of that really cool kind of blended yellowish grass, which I thought would be cool for a fall card instead of using green as the grass. I've folded along the little tabs there on both of them along those score lines that the die created for me, and then I'm adding some 1/8 inch score tape to those tabs also. I'm going to peel off one side of those tabs, and then I'm going to line that up right there with the bottom of my box, kind of making them equidistant from each other and just kind of looking here to see how I like how they look. And then now I'm going to move on to the sky of my card. So this is some knock on wood paper. I really liked that it had the wood grain. I thought that made for a really cool sky. So I'm going to add some adhesive to the back of that and then line that up into the back of my box. So this shadow box seriously needed some fall leaves. So I took some small stitched fall leaves, cut them out of white cardstock, and then I'm adding color to them with my Copic markers. So I put a darker orange in the middle, and then I'm blending it out with a lighter orange. I did it in the middle, I did it on the outsides, just kind of making them all look different and really look kind of like fall leaves. So I used from kind of light yellow all the way up to red, mixing the colors, mixing and matching them. I also added in some olivey greens too. And so I really wanted there to be a ton of fall color and just a ton of color to add to the card. And I love making those leaves with my Copic markers because it's quick and easy and they look incredible. So now it's time to actually form my box. I'm going to lay my 2 little pieces there, my hills down. I'm going to peel up that liner tape, and then I'm going to fold that right side of the box over, picking up that tape. And it's so much easier to do the box this way than trying to build it when it's all put together, because now you know that those hills are going to be perfectly straight in there because we adhered them when the box was flat, which is really cool. So now I can pull up the liner tape there, fold that other piece over, and that's just going to line up perfectly, and now I have a cute little box. I've stamped the So Thankful sentiment from Forest Feast onto a fancy folded banner, and I'm going to go ahead and fold along those score lines that the die created for me to create this really cool 3-dimensional banner that I'm going to add to the top of my box. All I need to do is just add a little adhesive to both of the ends of that banner, and I can line that up right on the top of my box, and I love the idea of a 3-dimensional banner on a 3-dimensional box. So my original idea was to have fall leaves kind of all the way around this rectangle. So you can see I'm adding tape to the leaves and then sticking them behind the shadow box opening. Then I'm adding in my cute little characters there. And as soon as I started doing that, I started thinking, I don't know about those leaves, so let me try adding leaves to the bottom instead. So I took the same thing, I added some adhesive to the leaves, and I'm tucking them right behind that opening of the shadow box. And I started really loving them at the bottom. So I popped off all the ones on the top, and I knew I'd use those later, so I just kept them to the side. And now I die cut a bunch of birch trees from craft paper and also knock on wood paper of the dark and the light browns. And so I'm going to start layering these birch trees into my box and then trimming off any excess. So I've added them to the back of the scene, but I'm also going to add them to the hills too, so that there's a lot of dimension with those little birch trees. So here now you can see I'm putting it right behind that hill there, and it's looking really, really cool. So I'm adding another one behind the hedgehog, and then now I'm going to take those fall leaves that I popped off the top of the box and I'm going to add them to the birch trees, and I think it's looking really cool. I'm also putting them behind the hills too, just for extra color and for it to look like the leaves kind of landed on the hills also. And I'm just adding more and more leaves until I like it. And I'm obsessed with fall leaves, I think because I live in Southern California, so I rarely get to see them, so I love making them. So I'm adding more and more fall leaves because they just make me so happy. And the more leaves you add kind of behind the different hills and everything, the more dimensional this box looks. My last finishing touch was to add the little apple to the raccoon, and I really love the pop of red in the middle. And then I love how dimensional this is. It's so 3D, it's so cool, but it folds flat and it fits in a standard envelope with standard postage, but when someone pops it open, it's this amazing 3-dimensional card that's actually a really cute decoration for fall too. So I just cannot wait to give this to someone. Now, of course, I had to share some incredible cards from our design team. So this card by Lynette is so sweet using Forest Feast. I love the tall birch trees in that scalloped window opening. And then Shari created this really cute card. I love how she curved the So Thankful for You. And then Elise's beautiful ink blended background is so cute. And I love how the hedgehog is giving an apple to the squirrel. It's so sweet. And then Yainea shows us that the Apana star cutters were actually sized perfectly to work with this set so that they can be the 4th person around the table. So you can use your Apana star critters with Forest Feast and create a super adorable scene like this. And then we have this super sweet card by Elise. I love how she added those hearts. It just makes it so perfect and wonderful. And then Nicole got super clever. She used the characters from For You Dear, and she has the little paws on the table, which I just love. And then Elena combined Leafy Tree Backdrop from last year with this set, and it's just a perfect combination. And Jen had the same idea too, so that Leafy Tree Backdrop is just perfect for these fun Thanksgiving scenes. And then this card by Elena is the one that inspired me to create my Pass the Gravy slider today. I love that orange sky that she created. And then this card by Lynette is so sweet. I love that they all have their little pilgrim hats on. And then Lizzie's card, that background is gorgeous, and I love that she added the stitch tree borders there. It looks so cool. And then Letitia got really creative. I love this clean and simple card with just the pumpkin pie on the tree stump. It's just wonderful. So I cannot wait to see what you guys do with Forest Feast. Thank you so much for watching today, and have an absolutely amazing day. Bye!